Welcome to Hitting Home with Mike and Arif on Rogers TV in Barrie, and this week we are thrilled to be joined by the 47th Mayor of the City of Barrie, His Worship Alex Nuttal. Thanks for joining us, sir.
Welcome.
Thank you so much to Mike and Arif. It's lovely to join you today.
Thank you. Well, congratulations first and foremost on your return to public office. Somewhat full circle if you actually take a look at it, where you began your life in public office as a councillor, winning, I believe, in 2006, in a term that, or a few terms that lasted you straight through to 2014, correct?
Correct, yeah.
And then you were able to transition. You were successful in your bid to transition in 2015 through 19 to represent what would become Barrie, Oro, Springwater, Medonte, I believe, Barrie, Springwater, or Medonte, excuse me, as our member of parliament there. And now you're back. It's 2022, almost 2023. And you're in the mayor's seat in the city of Barrie, and you ran a successful campaign. We'd like to talk about some of those things here today in terms of how we're going to roll many or all of those items, as many as you can, out over the course of the next 4 years. So let me just jump right in, if I might, with this, and that is that one of the greatest challenges for a mayor is you've got one vote on council. You sort of campaign on a slate of, or on a series of ideals, and then you're met by a series of council colleagues. You have one vote until now, and it seems like that the Premier has teed things up for potentially the city of Barrie to be eligible for what's referred to as a strong mayor's policy in about another year. What are your thoughts on that, sir?
Well, look, I think that our democracy is built on many people coming together, working together collaboratively, and representing the communities that they've been honored enough to represent. And I don't think that changes here in the city of Barrie. As I look at it, and I look forward in terms of what we have in front of us, I think it's really important that as a team we win together, we lose together, we set our priorities together. And we chart a path forward for the city of Barrie to build on what is already an incredible and a beautiful community, but really trying to provide improvements in the places that's required. When it comes to strong mayor powers, I don't think that it's something that I need or want. My goal is to always be working with our members of council and ensuring that everybody's voice is heard around the table throughout the city, but that we also work collaboratively so that we can pass good legislation locally here and make sure that Barrie is competitive on the provincial and national scene, because we need to attract jobs here, we need to attract people here, and we need to work incredibly hard to ensure that those who have chosen Barrie as their home get a complete community.
So last term of council was a little bit interesting for many. It certainly, council made some headlines, maybe not for the reasons that one would want to. What is different with the makeup of the members of council that you have? Obviously, a number returned and were successful in their bids to return, but you do have a series of fresh faces around council, some with less experience than others. How does that dynamic change and assist with the barometer that you want to set?
Well, look, I think it's always good to get new perspectives around the table. When you think about how our municipal government works, it works a lot differently than our provincial and federal government. There's no partisan system, and that is a benefit to our local municipal governance. And I think that as we look forward, I look around the table and say that we've been blessed with a great council, a great group of people. Those individuals worked very hard to receive the votes in their wards. And in two cases were actually acclaimed, didn't even require an election to take place. And I think that says it all. The voters don't get it wrong. And I hope that we don't have to deal with some of the issues that were dealt with last term of council. None bigger than COVID-19 and all of those, all of the stresses and challenges that came with that. But also, really my job is to try to help our council stay on the same page and balance the personalities out. But more than anything, balance the representation of the community that we've been hired to represent out around that table. And It's working really well so far, I believe, and I really look forward to working with these folks and making sure that continues.
Yes, and one of the priorities for you and for those around the table, and it's a big challenge, and of course that is getting our housing stock to meet with the demand that's there, and in doing so, hopefully we build some more affordability into buying a home in Barrie, renting a home in Barrie. The province just this week, as I'm sure you know, put some legislation forward. Their goal is they want to see at least or they believe we need at least 1.5 million more new housing units in Ontario just to meet the current demand and hopefully, future ongoing demand. They've taken some bold steps in there, and one of the things that they are doing is with regards to building additional suites within existing housing. Typically that's come before a city council, municipal council, wherever in Ontario for approval. They want to bypass that altogether in the hopes that maybe more second, third suites will get built within Ontario. I mean, it's not going to solve the problem, but every bit helps. What are your thoughts with regards to those provincial measures there?
Well, look, I think the province has identified that there's multiple ways to grow housing stock and rental stock specifically, I think, in this case. And, they're going to make the decisions that they make, and the cities will live with them because our relationship is one of a parent-child, not one that is different. The municipalities are not named in the Constitution. We don't have powers to fight back. That's just, not in our purview. When it comes to secondary housing, or in some cases third units, I think that there is a space for this, but we also have to be careful, right? Because one of the things is you look around the city of Barrie, and I think that you're asking about the city of Barrie as a whole, not just the policy, if I'm correct. One of the things that's beautiful about the city of Barrie is you think about like the Old East End or Sunnydale or Allendale, is that we have these mature neighborhoods with big trees and all of these things, and it would be a shame to me if they were just to disappear, right? I think that if you're constantly building new in mature neighborhoods, there's no such thing as a mature neighborhood, and so we need to balance it out. I think as the city grows, and it's growing very quickly, let's be honest. In some cases, it's being too quickly, and in some ways, it's not being quickly enough. So as it is growing, I think that you can really set the tone on the standards of housing for the future a lot easier than you can on the infill. And I think that those are the opportunities that the province and that those who are in this industry and sector should be looking to.
So interestingly, and by the way, I will go back to your comment and your response to my question regarding some of the legislation that the Premier has already granted or made available to Toronto and Ottawa that might roll out into other municipalities. And you've said you don't think, given the current dynamic and certainly your personal belief, ideology, philosophy, you wouldn't want to have to exercise that. But one of those sort of line items buried within that policy was the ability for a mayor to sort of veto or go against certain bylaws to move things forward in the event that, and I'll refer to this as, be careful, as the Premier's words regarding NIMBYism or challenges that are constantly getting in the way of seeing units be built and approved. So I recognize that fine balance, and I certainly think that the audience will appreciate your compassion towards the existing neighborhoods, et cetera. However, our city, certainly not uniquely, has seen challenges, roadblocks thrown up to what is referred to by some as progress or new development. And I guess the question comes down to is there an opportunity or a challenge that you recognize traditionally or recently at council with getting some proposals through? And is there a way to find a more efficient way or a more productive way to find that balance that you're looking for?
Well, I think that what you're actually speaking to right now, Arif, if I can, is really on the verge of red tape, right? Like it's the issues of approvals are months and sometimes years long, before they hit the council table. And we need to figure out how to make to ensure that Barrie has an efficient system, that whether it's a recommended approval or a recommended change or condition or a straight up decline, that we get there more quickly than we have been. And I look around the city of Barrie and I see some major issues facing our city. Like, we have people who are young, who can't find not only a place to purchase, right, but a place to rent at this point. We have senior citizens. When we were chatting off air before jumping on this air, you asked about my mother, and she can't find a place to downsize to that's affordable as a senior. Now, she might be on the extremity, being somebody who's a vulnerable citizen and somebody who's been disabled in the past. But I don't want to mark our city by being the place that vulnerable citizens can't find housing. I want to mark our city by being the place that we take care of everybody, we take care of our own. That's what Barrie's known for. And so, balancing out these issues going forward, there's no question that we need more housing. That's why the cost of housing is so high. But there's also no question it's not just a Barrie issue. This is a macro issue. So as we cut through the red tape on the process side, I think there's some other very significant issues that are headwinds, if you will, that the city of Barrie is facing. We have a water treatment facility that requires a $240 million upgrade. And if construction costs keep going up, that 240 is going to continue to grow higher. We have significant improvements that are needed in terms of sewer assets, water assets, underneath roads. We have roads that need to be upgraded. There's a lot of costs that's coming down the line for us. And we need to make sure that we have a competent financial plan in order to be able to get there. Because if I can tell you, the number one challenge that I see to building housing right now is not a council or a city that doesn't say, yeah, we need housing. Number one challenge is, how do we pay for it?
Excellent. And with that in mind, I think we are going to take this as an opportunity to go to break real quick. When we come back, we'll hear more from the 47th Mayor of the City of Barrie, His Worship Alex Nuttal, and we'll continue possibly a challenging conversation around how are we going to afford, how are we going to continue to pay for the things that we need right here and right now and in the near future in the City of Barrie moving forward. Stay with us for more of Hitting Home with Mike and Arif right after this break.
Welcome back to Hitting Home with Mike and Arif, and we are here with Barrie's new mayor, Alex Nuttal. And thank you again, Alex, for taking the time to be with us on the show. And in the first part of the show, we were talking about some of the challenges that the city faces, particularly around housing and housing affordability, and looking forward how we're going to meet those challenges. Another one of the things we heard this week from the province was that they're looking to possibly I don't know if this would be legislation or if it would just be a hard suggestion that municipalities soften up on development fees in the interests of maybe bringing more developers forward and maybe some of the existing developers jumping in and ultimately seeing more housing stock being built as a result. The catch-22 there is the more development we have, the more infrastructure is required to meet the needs of that new development, and that costs money. And as we talked about before the break, there are many costs. We need a lot of things, water treatment plant updates and so forth. Do you think it's a good or a bad idea to forfeit some of, if not all of the costs around that developers pay when bringing in new developments?
Well, look, I think, first of all, I'd like to go back to my own campaign platform, which included the removal of development charges on affordable housing units. I think it's a prohibitive tax for affordable units. It is something that gets in the way of affordable units being built, in the sense that when we have a market-driven housing economy, you look at the dollars and cents. The dollars and cents say, I can do better over there than I can over here. So what is the give and take on that subject to allow for us to meet our need in terms of affordable housing? And this is a subject that, as you know, is very dear to my heart. And I think that the city needs to do better on it, quite frankly. I think that everyone needs to do better on it. But specifically in this case, we're talking the city of Barrie. So as I look at it, I say, hey, DCs on affordable units, no problem. Remove those. Let's see what we can spur in terms of investment. When you look at it as a whole, we're looking at a package that's going to cost the city of Barrie somewhere in the neighborhood of $90 million at least. That package could go much higher. It's not going to come down in terms of the costs associated with Bill 23. And so the question is, where in our capital plan does that create a hole, right? I mean, we all know 1 + 1 = 2. So there's right now a $90 million hole minimum that's being created, and that's, quite frankly, before our increase in construction costs being calculated into our financial plan, and that's prior also to what we're seeing in terms of increased interest rates to fight inflation being calculated into our 10-year financial plan and 20-year financial plan. So I think that there's some holes. Some of it's created by Bill 23, some of it's created through the economic pressures we're facing from inflation, and some of it's in response to inflation, the interest rate changes that we have coming forward. I think that the city is in a position where we can actually help the province achieve what they're hoping to achieve.
Yeah.
In that we have land, right? We have the ability to service it. We have the will to service it. And we have a population, I think, understands how dire the housing crisis is here in the city of Barrie. What we're asking, and you'll see this continually rolled out, and this is probably only the second time that I've stated this publicly, is that we're looking for a partner on the provincial level. They've looked at reducing the cost to get into development gains to build housing in the city of Barrie and across the province. We're looking for a partner who will help fund the water treatment. So we're actually near the maximum right now today. We're near the maximum of what we can handle at the wastewater treatment plant. And the reason for that is because the downloads to the lake from the city of Barrie in terms of the phosphate, that needs to be below a certain level. And at the same time, we need to have enough capacity to manage the flow of wastewater into the plant. Those two things combined are leaving us in a position where we have to do this $250 million investment. And so I think if the province came to the table on that, I think it would provide a lot of opportunity for us to not only meet the targets that the province has outlined, but actually surpass and help them meet the targets in a bigger way than perhaps they've even envisioned at this point.
So I'm going to pick up where you left off a little bit there, and I appreciate that perspective. One of the things that always got my attention and curiosity was, if we set our fees at a certain amount, but we don't actually have uptake, then we're getting 100% of zero. And that's not going to help anybody anyway. So what happens, and what would happen if we were to either defer costs, waive costs, or find another line item on the balance sheet to be able to recover those costs, or if we were to amortize it over a certain period of time? And so my question to you is, I recognize that the people who do the amazing and very difficult work at City Hall in the finance department in terms of modeling and looking at projections, et cetera, they're also have been traditionally tasked with ensuring that we also maintain a very high credit rating. And of course, how much debt and how much deficit and what our financial outlook looks like has an impact on what our credit rating is, and our credit rating dictates our cost of borrowing. If, however, we were to find a way to find alternative sources of revenue and also get the uptake and have more people producing and generating other forms of revenue for the city of Barrie, how would the finance department look at that, and how would you as a mayor look at that?
So look, I always look for opportunities to create revenue in the city of Barrie. I always look for opportunities to cut capital spending if not necessary. That is the reality. Having said that, there are services that are expected in the city of Barrie, right? And those services are tied to a development charge at this point for when it's attached to growth. And so when we undercut that, the money's got to come from somewhere. So, when I look at it, okay, $90 million, you're right, we can amortize that out in a over a longer period of time. We can increase the debt the city of Barrie is taking on, and I'll get back to that in a second. But the reality is that the current taxpayers in the city of Barrie, are the ones who end up picking up the tab of the amortized period and the increase in debt repayment costs associated with that. So, whether it's a 1-to-1 or less than that, there is a transfer from growth, new people who don't live in Barrie right now, moving into homes, being subsidized by current people who live in the city of Barrie and who pay for all of those items right now. And so, I think that we have to have an honest conversation about what a reduction means versus what it doesn't mean. And there is an increase in cost on the current taxpayer when you reduce the amount that growth has to pay for. And when we're in a situation in the city of Barrie where we want to help the province meet their goal, but we need to have these investments made in order to do that. We had the opportunity to sit on council together years ago, and we kept hearing from staff, from consultants, that we weren't putting enough away, right? But we heard it all the time. Well, the reality is today that our development charge reserve has $20 million set aside for over $1 billion plan, right? So, that's 2%. It doesn't look right. But going forward, right, we've also had in this year, it's moved from a negative standpoint into a positive standpoint because there are permit applications being taken. There is movement forward on our goals. And so we in the city of Barrie haven't been in the position that perhaps others have in other places where the cost of development charges are prohibitive against the market that they're building in. And that's why this year, we're expecting over $1.2 billion, could be as high as $1.3 billion in terms of permits pulled in construction projects. And our highest point, I believe, was about $900 million last year. And so you're seeing a significant increase. Construction costs have gone up. That's part of the driver there. But so has the amount of units that we're seeing pulled.
And a big thing is the increase in demand for housing locally, as we've watched over the past few years, has driven our housing prices up. And those housing prices directly tie with our high rental rates. We have some of the highest rental rates in the country right now. We're certainly in the top 10 among municipalities with populations our size or greater. I'm curious to know, I'll just throw this out as an open question to you. It's early on in the term, you're just getting started, but we've talked a little bit about what the province is intending to do. What do you see that around that table at City Hall can be done can be done better to bolster the efforts with regards to housing, or maybe even some new ideas that are starting to come across the table so far early in the term?
Hey, that's a great question, Mike. Thank you for that. I think that as we look at what's going on at City Hall, I'm still getting my feet under me in terms of the first 90 days in office. I think it's actually been about 3 weeks, 21 days right now. And we're seeing lots of applications on the rental side. So that's a positive indicator. Assuming that construction costs are in the place, those rental applications can actually be processed and then constructed. The reality is, I think that's a good medium-term outlook for the city of Barrie on that front, on the rental front. The concern is there's a difference between an application for, let's say, draft plan approval and a built unit. The differences are time. It's probably 3 to 5 years. Secondly, the difference is getting an approval and then, the suggestions that you've made in your approval that you can get things actually built coming into fruition. There's a marked difference between that, and I'll give you the data behind that to right now we have about 13,700 approved units through draft plan. They're not through site plan, but they are through draft plan that could be built. The reality is that we need to figure out a way to help those folks get those units from where they are through the site plan process and into the construction process, because we can approve 100,000 draft plan units, but if they aren't being built, it has no effect on the market. It does not bring down rental costs, and it doesn't provide more stock.
So I'm glad you brought that up, Mayor Nuttal, and here's why. We talked about this on the show a few times over the last few months. The reality is, you're right, inflation is a reality. So there's nothing that happens in a silo or independent of something else going on within the market and the different elements that are contributors. So inflation is at a significantly higher point than is ideal. Let's leave it there. I've got an opinion on that. But so are interest rates. And so is the ability for the end user to actually obtain credit a mortgage, let's call it that. So you have a number, as you said, this could be a 2 or 3, 5 year process. You've got a number of applications that may have come in of those 13,000, I think you mentioned, units that are being proposed. And somewhere in the mix over the last couple of years, what was looking at near 1% rates and easier approval opportunities for the end user, mixed with all of a sudden higher rates and higher inflation. What is in the mind of the construction, the partners in construction, the development communities? What maybe is the Barrie Construction Association saying around their ability, the viability to see those applications come to fruition?
Look, Arif, it's a fantastic question. I think the reality is that our job is to get the approvals done, and their job is to build the product. What I'm hearing is that it's a difficult time to do business in the sector, and what that means on timing, I just can't tell you. I think that it'll be site specific, project specific. We are facing headwinds in the economy that we are not in control of. From the city's perspective, our cupboard is bare. We don't have the reserves ready to take on the investments that are required. We have inflation when it comes to construction costs, 60% increase over 2.5 years, I believe. We have interest rates that are skyrocketed. The city could borrow as low as 1% a year and a half ago, and now it's upwards of 5%. So you have a 500%, in worst case scenario, 500% increase in the city's borrowing costs. And we have DC reductions from the province when it comes to new development. So the city's headwinds are very, very difficult to take on. And I think it mirrors, quite frankly, the way individuals are feeling out in the marketplace. And that's having an effect on what can be moved in terms of purchased units. Hopefully it creates the opportunity for pension funds, et cetera, to be able to come in and invest in rental products.
And what looks to be a busy 4 years ahead here, as you're putting it to us here. We have to go for a break right now, Mr. Mayor, and we'll pick this up on the other side.
Welcome back to Hitting Home with Mike and Arif on Rogers TV. And I'm going to stop referring to you as the 47th mayor and the new mayor. Let's just get into it. We've got Mayor Alex Nuttal with us on the show, and we're thrilled to have you. Not the easiest conversation. I mean, I'm having fun. I'm enjoying it. It's full of great information. But we have a tough road ahead, and I think you've started to address that in our first couple segments on the show. I will get right to it. We've got challenges. Everybody, as you said, the sort of the optics and the emotions and the feelings at City Hall are being mirrored or reflected by those who are the ratepayers at home. But with this tough hill to climb, you did campaign on an idea that we would find a way somehow to ensure that we don't increase taxes. Well, when we've got, and those are my words, I'm paraphrasing, but when we've got anywhere between 6 and 8% inflation, the cost of borrowing and all that thing is through the roof. How do you plan to accomplish that?
Well, look, we have to take a tough look here at the city's financial projections. We need to take a very tough look at the budget coming out this year. I think that, for me and for the residents that I spoke to, affordability is an issue. And one of the key drivers to affordability the city has control over is taxation. When it came to the capital surcharge, or unfortunately named it reserve or something like that, it is something that I believe in the sense that when we're talking about fixing roads and bringing corporate assets up to snuff, hard infrastructure up to snuff, we need to have the funds to be able to complete that and accomplish that goal. At the same time, there is an idea right now that in every house across this city and in every budget the folks are putting together, that they're realizing that there's a pinch when it comes to the grocery store. There's a pinch when it comes to getting gasoline. And so I think that the city feels that pinch as well. And we need to do our best to get into a position where we can either limit or eliminate an operating tax increase here in the city of Barrie. And so when I spoke about, and when I continue to speak about tax increases and the operating budget for the city of Barrie, I'm not referring to our partners, I'm not referring to third-party organizations. I'm referring to City Hall. So when I spoke about it, it was always, we're going to make sure we get City Hall under control in terms of the growth of our budget. So I'll give you an example. In 2014, when I left council, the operating budget was $113 million tax supported. Okay. In 2022, that's risen to $172 million per annum. That's a 53% increase in taxation supporting the City Hall operating budget, not our partners, not the police department, not the county, City Hall. Okay. Of that, when you look at what happened with inflation and with the increase in population, we had about a 9% or 8% increase in population. We had somewhere around a 20% increase in inflation over that period of time. We've doubled the pressures in terms of growth of taxation supporting City Hall's operating budget. And so, those are the things that we need to come to terms on. Where is the money going? Why were these increases in place? Certainly, there's a lot of planning for the future that took place. Certainly, there's a lot of talented staff at City Hall that are, making the city tick. But at the same time, why is it increased, and how do we live within our means going forward?
So what I'm hearing you say, Mayor Nuttal, is that as the city and our population continues to grow, proportional growth or proportional alignment within the city, whether it's through resources, whether it's partners or not, is realistic. But I'm hearing you say it was 52%, versus an aligned percentage.
Exactly, and so let me put it this way: we've jumped ahead, if you will, when it comes to taxation, and so we need to be finding and during good times, during good economies, right? And so we need to be cognizant of the world we're living in around us and make some tough decisions.
And one of the costs we have as a city is, as the population continues to grow, so too does the need for reliable transportation systems, roadways, transit systems. Where do you see us being able to improve, and what's the city's plan on keeping pace with that growing demand, just to avoid that inevitable gridlock that everybody fears. You go to Toronto, you know what I'm talking about, getting on the Don Valley
Forget
Parkway.
Toronto, you can see it right here.
Well, it's starting
Every
here to
road
a
is under
degree.
construction, like every road.
Yes, but there's a silver lining to the construction at least. But
Yes.
are we on target? Are we doing what needs to be done? Or do you see a new plan or an enhanced plan that needs to be put in place?
So I have a different outlook on transit. My outlook on transit is it is actually a function of planning, in the sense that if we're looking for a transit system that pays for itself, that is very functional, easy to use, we need to make sure we plan a city that allows that to happen.
Yeah.
We need to make sure that as we are planning the city, when we're looking at, let's say, the transit nodes or our urban growth centers, it needs to be accessible, easy to use for people. That will limit the amount of parking required on new buildings being built. It will allow for a much easier city to get around in terms of traffic and congestion. I look down, at the Allendale station. There's quite a number of proposals coming forward around there that provides not only the opportunity for housing, but also provides the opportunity for a robust transit system to operate up and down that corridor. And I think that as the city moves forward, we need to make sure that we're identifying those corridors that can really support our transit system expanding, being less reliant on the taxpayer, more reliant on user rate. But I will say this, that, and I will say this with a smile, that there's some good news coming on the transit front, and stay tuned for the next 10 days.
Okay, wow, there's a teaser. Stay tuned for the next 10 days. But listen, we've got, you touched on it, so I'm going to go there. Obviously, there were some recent rulings regarding the actual Allendale station lands itself. So is there an opportunity to see progress and advancement there? There was also, though, I see your smile, but there was also similarly discussion around the moving of the terminal from downtown over to Allendale. Obviously, that's been a point of discussion. Let's put it that way. But in terms of moving things forward, you do see other municipalities looking at express routes for their transit system, lanes that run down the center of the road for buses, etc. You're smiling. I want to let you go there. Let me hand it off to you. Go ahead.
So look, I think that what you're talking about, Arif, is exactly right. When we look at these corridors around transit terminals, like that's where we're going to have the best pickup of our transit service. And so, some of that will require maybe some new thinking on how we do lanes, those types of things. But more than anything, if you take a look at the master plans being proposed by staff right now, and I'm smiling because I might have been the only person who attended the transit master plan open house. And when I say the word might, I was the only person that attended it. And at that, one of the items that's being considered is an express route from the RVH to Parkway, and jumping on the 400 and off of the 400. And so I think there's some neat opportunity in the city of Barrie. What has traditionally been a drawback on the city of Barrie in terms of congestion and how our transit system works, having a city that's split by the 400, actually looking at utilizing it to help people get around is a unique opportunity, and it's encouraging to see staff working through these types of things. I would like, perhaps Arif, you and I and Mike can go and meet with Minister Mulrooney and ask for one of those transit lanes on the 400, because it'll make the 20-minute drive a 15-minute drive, especially on those Thursday nights and Fridays and Saturday mornings of the long weekends in the summertime. But I think there's some great opportunities that'll be coming down the line as we start to think, how we have a more efficient and effective service.
So I think that this is one of those things that we've talked about. We touched on it before. I mentioned it to you in the first segment. Listen, we don't necessarily always have to match line item for line item. But if we can find, and this is me pontificating, here I am, I'm not even a politician, but if we can find opportunity for savings or increase opportunity for revenue whereby our riders have a better quality of life, our riders are able to make better use of their time and be more efficient and effective and productive with their time, even if there is a cost, how much other revenue or how much other savings would there be if that was a possibility? So Godspeed to you on that one. I hope you have the persistence to see that through.
and it's good for the local economy as well, not just City Hall.
Absolutely. With that in mind, we are going to go to break. We might be a couple minutes early there. Sorry, Ron, but we're going to go to break. And we come back. We've got some fun idea that Mike came up with that we want to try out on you. So we're going to come back with a little bit of a rapid fire session for you. Mayor Nuttal, thanks for being with us on Hitting Home with Mike and Arif. We'll be right back after this break. Welcome back to Hitting Home with Mike and Arif, and not to jinx you, Mayor Nuttal, but you've done well for the first through the first 3 segments of the show. Let's see how well you do here. But before we get into the rapid fire, the fact is actually we did have one more question that I thought would
One or two.
Yeah, 1 or 2. So we'll postpone that. We'll keep you in the hot seat, wondering what's going to happen under the rapid fire. But listen, every good council, every good mayor and council, if in my opinion, if they're good, they look to the experts for some input. You've got in-house experts. Obviously, you've got some great staff and talent, as you referred to early in the show, right in-house at City Hall. But there's always an opportunity to get some outside counsel from third parties, whether they are, what are you looking for, consultants, et cetera, and getting some comparatives on what other municipalities might be doing who are facing similar challenges. Have you had an opportunity to have any discussion around sort of where we are and what the projections look like?
Yeah, I think first of all, the Hempson report that came out last fall, which identified that there was some significant pressures already on the city when it comes to the amount of infrastructure that's required, while balancing out our reserve funds and then looking at the debt that we would need to take on. And a lot of those projections were made in a different interest rate environment than we live today. So I want to give you an example. If we were borrowing at 1% and we needed to borrow $100 million, right? The result would be today, we'd be getting that at 5%, and the cost would go from $1 million a year to $5 million. The problem the city of Barrie faces is that our debt projections without increased construction costs are sitting somewhere in the neighborhood of $740 million in 2027-28. And when you consider the impact of that, for every $100 million, you're spending now $4 million more, or over a 1% increase on the operating tax to our city. When you consider that, the outlook is grim, and we have work to do. Some of that is moving some items further out in the capital plan. Some of that is saying, how do we do this more efficiently, and maybe removing items from the capital plan. And the other question is, how do we drive new revenues, as Arif has been saying earlier. So I think there's a really big nut to crack when it comes to the city's debt projections and financial outlooks.
I'll follow that with a more general question for you. In our recent municipal elections in the province, we saw right next door Oro-Medonte. Not only did they elect a new mayor, as we did here in Barrie, they elected an entirely new city council, which to anyone looking from the outside, there's the presumption that the level of trust with the previous government had obviously gone down somewhat, to say the least. So I just want to turn that around to as a question for you, perhaps. What do you think are the fundamentals that a city council and a mayor needs to have in place in order to maintain that trust with the constituents?
You know, my feeling at this point, and I think this will change, grow more, and mature, is that what people need to see is a council that functions together as a unit. They need to see that first and foremost. If there is the dysfunction that we've seen, quite frankly, we saw some of it here in Barrie, and we've seen it throughout the county in different places. If that dysfunction takes over the meetings, it takes over the priorities of the city, then we'll be in tough places in the next election. And I think that that's the right. I think it's a right call from the taxpayers if they decided to make that sort of change in the next election due to some sort of dysfunction that existed. The other item, I think, is that there has to be transparency and accountability. There needs to be illumination and light on the policies that exist, but even more so on the changes to policies for the future. And from where I sit, I think that I'm going to try to accomplish that day in and day out. It means speaking with members of the media like yourselves. It means really highlighting what we can do going forth in our council meetings, in our general committee meetings. It means ensuring that folks have an open door to walk into City Hall, to walk into the mayor's office, ask questions, give opinions, give us ideas. Like, you know, our residents travel to other cities all the time. And they see great things that they visit. I want to see those ideas brought back here and institute the ones that make sense here in the city of Barrie. And I think that that will deal with that issue.
Well, Mayor Nuttal, I will invite you to check your inbox shortly, because I'm sure Mike and I have some opinions that we want to share with you. And again, glad that we can help spread that word that City Hall is open to ideas and input. On the flip side of that, though, be careful what you ask for, because the downside can be a council that interprets that as, oh, we're going to have to watch every single thread on social media, or somebody shows up, with 20 friends to city council. The challenge has been quite often not forgetting that there's 150,000 people that you represent, not the 20, 30, 100 people who may or may not storm City Hall on any given night to argue or debate against a certain application.
No question, Arif, and we've been sitting there when there's sometimes a loud minority of people that come out. But having said that, I think that we have a very structured team here. We have a very formidable team around the council table, and I think that everything we do needs to be weighed against the priorities that we choose, and then you choose a path forward from there. And I'm really excited and hopeful that we'll do the right thing.
Well, I'm going to take this as an opportunity for an amazing segue. Beautifully done. I don't think you had that scripted in front of you, but talking about priorities, needs and wants, etc., we are going to come at you with a few questions, rapid fire style.
Rapid fire, and you can answer this with as much, hopefully, brevity, as a word that my partner here doesn't know how to spell or even pronounce. But so the first question of our rapid fire here, and we got half a dozen of them here, is we all need mentors as we go through life. Who would you say is one of your major influences right now in the chair you're sitting in as mayor? Who's been one of your major influences in the past, and who you may look to on an ongoing basis, if I may ask?
That's a great question. I'll tell you somebody who's given me some very good advice for life, and I certainly practiced it inside of my job as mayor, is Joe Anderson. He was former publisher of the Barrie Advance. He said to me, anything you want to achieve in a day needs to be done by 9 a.m. The rest of the day is putting out fires. And I think that I bring that to the mayor's office and the mayor's chair, and certainly do my best to have the items of the day complete so that we can deal with the new items of the day that come up. Although we aren't as close anymore because he's not geographically close. I still look at that mentorship that he gave me years ago as incredibly important in my growth as an individual, as a businessman, and certainly as a politician.
Excellent. I don't think we're going to succeed in the rapid part of the rapid fire, but let's keep going forward. No, I love it, and don't stop. Keep going. I'll use one word, but I will say that this came up during your term as a counselor. So scratch your head and go back a little bit. A university.
Necessary.
Yeah. How about a convention center?
I think it's something that the city is growing up. We're going to be a city of 300,000 people, and we need to figure out what it looks like.
Yeah.
Very good. I'm going to skip over this one because we talked about it a moment ago. So we'll skip over the train station and bus terminal, but let's get into this. Has been long in the planning. The farmers market year-round at the former, or what will be the former bus terminal.
I think that these are a lot of projects that require a way to figure out the funding on. The principle of it, I think, on our waterfront, creating the spaces between the water and the downtown, and the opportunity for a market to take place is a wonderful one.
Mm-hmm. How about our waterfront? There have been improvements over time. It's a point of pride for Barrie, our waterfront, one of the nicest in Ontario, I would think. And what do you think about the need or desire for food trucks and other opportunities for commerce and tourism along our waterfront?
I'm going to throw this in there, though, before you answer. How do you balance it between that 50-50 that we had a few years ago, come back on the survey, what the residents were thinking about, what serves the residents versus what serves the tourists?
Yeah.
Yeah, so first of all, my first response is this, is that I'd look to some opportunities for some resident-only days on our waterfront. Secondly, when it comes to, we have the best waterfront anywhere.
Yeah.
Some of it is overutilized and some of it's underutilized. And I think that as we're projecting and making decisions on our waterfront, they need to be done in a 50-year outlook, not a 2-year outlook. And so I think that as we move forward, I really do hope that we continue to have the beauty of it, but also make it a place that attracts people and brings commerce to the city.
So with that in mind, I'm throwing an additional one in there, Mike, and it is really around the downtown in general, the downtown as a whole. And, I think aside from noisy mufflers and high taxes, et cetera, one of the most popular topics of conversation has been the state of the downtown. And that can be interpreted as either commercially and how is it thriving or not thriving, and opportunities for people to do commerce. Also, residents' comfort level and ability and desire to participate and engage and populate the downtown, both coming from all 10 wards into the downtown, but also really in populating and increasing the uptake of residents in the downtown. Maybe give us a moment on your thoughts on that, Mayor Nuttal.
I believe that downtown is the heart of any city. We've had a city that's been growing to the south, leaving the heart of the city a little bit to the north. We've had a situation where we have a prisoner drop off downtown. It's creating a negative situation in many ways. And we need to find ways to make sure that we're taking care of our own who are going through either some sort of difficult time in their life, or there's a mental health issue or an addiction issue. But we also need to make sure it's a clean, safe place to do business, to go with your family, and to just quite frankly enjoy those congregation points. I mean, look at Meridian Place is a prime example of that. Like, we need to make sure that that's something that can be easily utilized in a safe and clean way.
The reality of it is, though, I'm sorry I talked over you there. The reality of it is, though, is that this has been a talking point for a number of years. What about some action?
Well, I think you're exactly right. So we will see action on that, Arif. There is no question. Part of that is policing and ensuring the police have the resources to fully do their job in the city of Barrie, but also in downtown, keeping us safe from the potential hazards. And the other side of it is creating the environment where it's a safe environment, but it's one where commerce and business and family can foster. And so I think what you'll see, I've already had conversations with this with other levels of government. I think what you'll see is some action on this. They're not our decisions unilaterally, but squeaky wheel, right? And I'll continue to bring up day in and day out that we need to change the system that delivers those who are being released from prison to Barrie's downtown without any sort of accountability moving forward.
Excellent. And I think we're almost out of time here. Is there anything in our final few seconds you'd just like to add here? We've got about 30 seconds left, Alex.
Look, I just want to say thank you to you two for having me on the show today. We've obviously known each other a long time, but I think the questions that you're asking are the right questions. I think that the idea that we as a city have some work to do is correct. And hopefully you will continue to hold us accountable for the job that we do over the next 4 years.
Fantastic.
Excellent.
So glad to have you on the show, Mayor Nuttal, and we will have you back on in the next few months just to get an update from you after your first 90 days. We'll be sending out a request. So thanks for joining us on Hitting Home with Mike and Arif, and we'll see you again next time.
Thank you.
Sounds great. Thanks so much.